live interview show with Become a Fearless Father. And today my guest is Brad Smotherman. Dude, thank you so much for hopping on. Really appreciate it. Let's get right in if that's good with you.
Excited to be here, man. Appreciate you having me on.
Awesome, man. I appreciate that. So we talked a little bit, right? And we're both in the Coach's Secret doing our thing. We got our podcast going on. We got our businesses going on. And then we got a loving family that we want to spend as much time with as well, right? And you can tell by the way I'm talking already. I'm like, oh, yeah, I got to do this. I got to do that, right? Today, I haven't had the opportunity to spend as much time with my kids as I want, which gets that volume, that level of overwhelm up a little bit, right? And I'm just wondering, man, from, also having 2 kids, how do you handle that kind of pressure that we put on ourselves to make sure that we pretty much are everywhere all the time and at 100%, right?
I think it's a great question, and it's a tough one at the same time, because I kind of feel like overwhelm is going to happen as much as we do our best to stave it off. So I think the first thing is just to really understand that life is going to happen, unexpected things happen. And so with that comes a certain level of unpredictability that could throw us into overwhelm at times. But just a couple of practical things that I do. Number one, I think that it's really important that you take care of yourself first, because it's like, for me to be the best husband that I'm going to be, I have to be the best me I'm going to be. For me to be the best father I'm going to be, I have to be the best me I'm going to be. So if I can't be the best that I can possibly be, I can't help anybody else.
True.
And so what I do for me, I get up at 3:30 every morning. A lot of people think that's early. I guess it sort of is. I'm at the gym at 4, so I'm taking care of my physical body first. I'm out of there, showered at 5:30. Go to Starbucks, get my coffee. And, from there, the second thing that I really believe in is planning your day. So I have a planner. I don't think I have it with me. Basically, it's the Brennan Burchard planner. You can get it on Amazon.
Yeah.
And what I really like about it, it's like an accountability group with yourself, because it has like questions about what you're going to do today. At the end of the day, you have a second set of questions, like what was I productive about? And if we can kind of manage our time in that way, I think it's going to stave off as much as we can as far as that overwhelm.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that, man. I mean, you can't find yours. I got mine right here, and I'm pretty much the same. I mean,
for sure. Yeah.
Something extracted from what he does, and I absolutely love that, man. It's so important. And not only in what you just said, right? Not only in planning out your day, but also at the end of your day, keep yourself accountable. It's like, did I get to do everything that I wanted to do? And if I didn't, what happened, right?
Yeah.
What are my challenges so I can improve the next day? Love it, man. 3:30,
sure.
Is that early? I would say for me, I tried 4 o'clock. It's just not working, right? But that's the whole thing about this life is like, what works for you, do it, brother, and just make it work, right?
But I have to now. If I get up at 6, I feel so far behind because things are already beginning to happen in the day. Like, I feel like empowered. I get up at 3:30. I'm at the gym at 4. Nobody's going to catch up with me.
There you go. Yeah, I love that, man. I love that. So just to put that in perspective, right? What time do you go to sleep?
I go to sleep fairly early. I'd say about 9. So I'm a big fan of the Andy Griffith Show. And so I'll watch some Andy Griffith and then go to bed about 9. So, I mean, some people would say that's kind of old manish, but I would call it wise.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree with that one. Absolutely, 100%, man. I keep telling everybody that, right? I love that because what are you going to do at night? Just sit and watch TV? Most people, and again, it all depends who you are. But for me, for example, I can't. Like, I can do live interviews because this is exciting, right? I'm talking to somebody that's exactly like me or even better than me, has great ideas, right? I get excited.
Yeah, for sure.
If I would be working, like, because for me, it's now 7 o'clock at night. If I be working on things, I know for a fact I'll be getting less out of it than what I would do that in the morning and just make sure I go to bed on time, right? And then wake up again and get my routine in before everybody else wakes up. Yeah, I love it, man. I'm absolutely like on point. So, Brad, before we go any further, man, let's talk a little bit about you, right? What's your background story? And I always like to share with the audience so they know exactly, like, what's your marriage situation like, how long you've been married, all that good stuff. And, how many kids do you have, how old are they, and stuff like that, so people can relate and figure out a little bit now what's going on.
Yeah, right? Totally. So, and I guess I'll share a little bit more about my background on this podcast than I have on others because I think it's relevant.
Nice.
I was raised by my grandparents from the time I was 18 months old. My grandmother took me in, and my grandfather,
Mm,
and they were amazing people. So I had an amazing upbringing, but it wasn't because of my parents. My mother was an addict, and my father
mm,
was pretty absent, and that was a good thing for me. But overall, it gave me a sense of what I wanted to accomplish when I was older. And so when I met my now wife, we were in high school. We were just friends, but we started hanging out, I guess, sophomore year of college, and that's when the spark happened. And one of the things that was really attractive about her to me was how great of a mother she would be. And
mm,
so I knew that checked one of my big boxes, you know. Um, and so we've been married for 10 years now, as of about a month ago. We have a strong marriage, but we've had some tough times. And it's interesting to me. I always thought that as long as there wasn't like physical abuse or cheating or that kind of thing, that marriages would be pretty easy.
yeah.
I haven't found that to be the truth, you know. And the thing is, like, I have a great wife. I have an amazing wife. You know, she's so super supportive of me. But we have two children. I have a 4-year-old daughter and an 18-month-old son. And I'm a real estate investor full time and mentor to apprentices across the country. So,
Wow.
you know, I have a full time and a half work life,
Yep.
but I've got a pretty decent team around me, and you know, just having a lot of fun, man. I mean, I'm living the life I guess 10 or 15 years ago I would have dreamed for.
That's nice. That's what we're living for, right? That's awesome.
Mm,
So let me ask you a question about that because that ties in really well with what I want to talk to you about. And I didn't know your background story, right?
yeah,
So most of us we have it fairly easy, right? Meaning like for me, for example, I just had my mom and dad that take good care. They took good care of me, right? Could have done better, maybe, right?
mhm,
Maybe not. I don't know. Who knows, right?
yeah,
But you didn't have your mom and dad. Besides that, your mom, you just mentioned was an addict, right?
mhm,
So that must have brought things with you. Now, I followed Oprah Winfrey and I heard her interview these twins, right? Where they've been abused and one just completely made it and the other one just didn't, right?
mhm.
Now it looks from the sound of it, you've also been able to make it work for you, right? So you make things happen for
Yeah.
you. What's been one of the key things that you can share with the entrepreneur dads out there that are struggling that's really worked for you to switch it and to build this amazing life for you?
I think that everything can be made into a positive if it's looked in the right light. So
Mm,
my father um, has been of critical importance in what I've done because he showed me mostly what not to do. And
mhm,
so um, because of that, I mean, there's a lot of value there if you look for it. You know, and I mean, I haven't spoken to him in almost a year, and I don't think that that's going to change anytime soon. I mean, if he called me, he was sick or something, I would go see him. But you know, I don't feel a need for that relationship.
mhm,
Where I guess really in my early 20s, I probably did because I had something to prove. But
mhm.
you know, I think that you can take anything negative and turn it into positive if you're looking for the right things. And I guess that all kind of partially comes down to mindset.
Exactly. So learning that from your dad, what are some of the things that you took from that helps you now show up as a dad?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is patience. You know, he
Mm,
had very little patience for anything that didn't go his way. Um, and I think it's kind of interesting. I think a lot of people, let's say my 4-year old, you know, so this morning she got very upset she couldn't find her shoes that she wanted to wear to school today,
yep.
which is understandable. You know, this is something that if it were me and I had my favorite pair of shoes and I couldn't find my shoes, then I would be upset. She started to throw a bit of a fit, and she's a very, very good girl. But it was kind of a problem. Um, and I think a lot of parents would tell her, like, no, you shouldn't be angry. Like, you know, stop doing that. And what I want to do is meet her emotion and allow it. You know, there's no reason that she shouldn't feel angry and she
Hmm.
shouldn't. But why should I be threatened by that? You know,
Hmm.
and I think a lot of people are. Um, I really want to be present for my children, and that's something that, frankly, I struggle with as an entrepreneur. It's like if I have my cell phone, then I have the potential to be working, and
Yep.
so there's always like that gray area of like what work really is.
Hmm.
Um, but I think having patience for my children is something that I learned. Being present as much as and I think I do pretty good at it, but there's still room for improvement is something there. I'm very intentional with them. So we do affirmations with my little girl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that's something that I highly recommend because, I mean, children are so impressionable. So literally on the way to school this morning, I take her to school. She goes to a Montessori school. And on the way to school, she's saying, I'm loved, I'm strong, I'm special, and I can do anything.
Nice.
And I'm just like, man, if I can give her that, I'm not worried about some punk teenage kid when she's in her dating years because she knows she's loved, she knows she's strong, she knows she's special. Man, they don't have a chance.
Exactly. That will weed out all the ones you don't want to be dating your daughter.
That's right.
Man,
well, she's going to know her value, like she knows her worth at that. So,
exactly.
Yeah, she's not going to settle.
There you go. There you go. See, and later on, yeah, that's what it's all about, right? And then being the example with how you treat her mother, right? Your wife.
Yeah.
Plus, what I really enjoyed in one of the groups, I saw this one father, and he decided to not only go on date nights with his wife, but also go on dates with his daughter, right?
Yep.
That was so powerful for me. I'm like, dang, I don't have a daughter.
Yeah, and that's a great thing.
Oh, I gotta make a daughter. And she's like, hell no. I'm like, oh, come on. I want these date nights. They look really cool.
Yeah, and my little girl, she's kind of getting to the age where if mommy and daddy are kissing, she's screaming, stop kissing. And I'm like, this is good for you to see. It's like daddy loves mommy and you need to know that.
Exactly. That's how that works.
Yeah, for sure.
Nothing else though. Just kissing.
Yeah, keeping it rated G for sure.
Exactly. That's awesome. I love that. So one of the things you mentioned, right? Patience. Mm-hmm. How do you, because patience, it sounds really simple. Yeah, of course, everybody's going to agree with you, right? Yeah, absolutely. Patience is important. I've noticed from my own journey now as a father, and my oldest is 6, my youngest is 4, it's not always that easy, especially with the youngest one, man. He's a handful, right? Yeah. And I know I write it down every single day. Be calm, be patient, right? And then still, I lose control sometimes, right? How do you, are there some exercise that you do? I know meditation, for example, is a big help. Or is that something that you practice to make sure that in the moment that it happens, you turn back? What is it that you do to make sure that you reach that level of patience that you want to convey when you're around your kids, right?
Yeah, I think being physically tired is a good thing. It's like if I'm somewhat lethargic because I got up at 3:30 and she's throwing a fit at 6:30 and I just left the gym. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of energy to get upset with anyway. But one thing that I really try to keep in mind, and this is something that I thought about a lot with my little girl, is, today is the smallest that I'm ever going to see her again, and just realizing it's like, she's a child, she has so much in front of her and so much to learn. And for her to, be upset about something that is reasonable for her to be upset about. And even if it wasn't, it's like, she's still a child, just keeping that in mind. So I think everything's perspective, and I'm certainly not perfect. I mean, I've lost my patience before as well, but I've definitely never taken it to the point where I've done something that I think, gosh, I really shouldn't have done that. It's like, if I get upset, it's like, let me go and spend a couple of minutes by myself. Like, wife, you take over. Or, if I'm by myself with the children, as long as they're not in a dangerous situation, it's like, let me go in the other room where I can still see you, but I'm going to work on myself for 30 seconds. Just taking that time out, I think, is a good thing as well.
Yeah, take a couple of deep breaths.
Yeah, well, you need them sometimes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. My oldest started to recognize now. It's like when I go, he knows. It's like, okay, I gotta slow down. What's going on? What's going to happen now? But he knows, if I take a couple of deep breaths, because it really helps you to reevaluate it.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So that's fantastic, man. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. Now, one of the things I got to try and see, so I stay a little bit connected with what we're talking about, right? Let's continue with that. So how do you make sure within all the busyness, right, that you make sure you got the time to connect with your wife?
Well, we're big on date nights. We do quite a bit of traveling. Whenever we travel, not all the time, but in general, we bring our babysitter with us so that we can have time together. I mean, the best thing that I can do for my children is show them a successful marriage, And so the priority for the children is not necessarily them. It's me and wife, And so I think date nights are good. We're about to start dancing classes together, so having something that is not just a dinner and a movie, because that's just kind of boring. I mean, some dopamine activities. I have a life coach, Rebecca. She's amazing, and she's like, let's do some dopamine sort of dates. So let's go rock climbing, or to a winery, or dancing, or to the shooting range, or something that's just a little bit different that you can do that's fun together. I mean, people stop having fun together, man. And I mean, you've got to make that a priority. So date nights, some vacations. I mean, if money's tight, I think just playing a game of checkers or whatever, just spend some time to connect.
Exactly. Monopoly is what we play.
Yeah, well, being a real estate guy, man, if I lost to my wife at Monopoly, it would be a bad so, I don't know if I can really I mean, it would really hurt my feelings. I think I would hide it well enough, but I'm not sure about that one.
Right, and she will post that all over the internet.
Oh yes, well, as she should.
That's awesome, man. I play with my kids. We play a lot of memory. And my oldest, he's only 6, but he keeps beating me, man. It's starting to become frustrating. It's like, what? You kidding me right now? But again, man, it's those kind of things. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the most fun, right? Because it's so easy to sit down and say, like, all right, we're tired. Let's just turn on the TV, right? Like,
yeah, or 3 different people are on their phones, and that's really a problem. I mean, like going to a restaurant so many times, even teenagers, you see them and they're sitting, each of them's on their phone, and I doubt they're working on work, because they're like, probably in college or maybe high school. And I'm thinking, where's the communication? Like, where's the connection there? So I think that's a problem, but I digress.
Yeah, no, that's quite right. I love it when we go off the rail. So, since we're talking about mobile phones and stuff like that, right? Have you, have you had discussions with your wife in regards to, like, hey, how do we set this up in the house? How are we gonna introduce mobile phones, laptops, screen time, all that stuff? Because I mean, she's 4, so she's getting to that age where a lot of people, as you just mentioned, like I've seen 1-year-olds in the stroller, right, just have their mobile phone already. It looks like it's installed in the stroller, right? So they don't make too much noise or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, we really limit that kind of activity. And I mean, if we're on a long road trip or we're on a flight, I mean, that's a little bit different. But I mean, we have friends of ours that all they do is put their kids in front of a screen. And that's like the screen is raising the child. And I'm thinking, man, that's just not going to work out long term. And there's some really bad studies that are coming out about brain development and screen time and those kinds of things. So I really think you have to be cognizant of that. The time that we're generally watching television or doing something like that, I mean, we're trying to watch material that is constructive. So, Daniel Tiger, I'm assuming you're familiar with Daniel Tiger.
Nope.
So it's like okay. So Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, there's like a cartoon version in the US. Okay. And there's so many life lessons, not only for the child, but for the parent. So, I mean, they have like these catchy songs. So, I mean, I've seen my little girl get, she doesn't want to try new food. And then she starts singing the Daniel Tiger song, try new food because it might taste good. And I'm thinking, man, that's really good programming. So, I think that screen time needs to be limited, but if you're just make the time constructive, like let's not watch Maury Povich, you know what I mean, or like Jerry Springer or some ridiculousness that's like talk reality TV, like we just don't need that in our child's life.
Exactly. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Absolutely. So we're going to go off topic completely. Like, I really enjoyed it. One of the things that I noticed when I was checking out your Facebook was, top 50 podcaster, right? I was like, dang, that's impressive. Now I got a podcast, of course. This one will become the podcast. We'll take off the audio and make that a podcast, right? So I'm wondering, man, what made you decide to do that, and what got you to that incredible achievement?
Well, it's kind of a difficult thing to explain. As a real estate investor, there's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of bad information out there. And, a lot of as I began to come up in my real estate business, I began to kind of rub elbows with some of the people that I used to really look up to. And whenever that happened, we'd have private conversations, and they'd say, well, I can't believe that really worked. And I'm thinking, wait, you teach this, like you teach people to do this. And you're telling me you can't believe it really worked.
Oh.
And I just realized really how fake the industry was. And so when I started my podcast, it was the theme of it was to tell you the truth about what it takes to create a high level 7-figure real estate investing company. And so we had a small email list, and we began to broadcast it out to that. But it just kind of took off. And when I wrote that, I got as high as number 14 in top business iTunes. So and since then they've changed the algorithm, so I've kind of dropped off. But at one point we were certainly top 50, and it's been a lot of fun. I will say it's tough for me to do the podcasting thing because I'm an introvert at heart, and it's tough for me to get up and broadcast all the time because I really, after doing this for 10 years, what I think is just kind of innate, I realize isn't. So, what I think is just kind of normal and should be a normal thought process really isn't a lot of the time. So once I realized that and I get inspired, okay, like let's go back and podcast again. But I think the message resonated because people wanted the truth.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, that's what we're looking for. That's fantastic, man. I appreciate you sharing that. We got a couple of minutes before we sign off. Can you share, like, what will be the biggest golden nugget or advice that you would like to share to our fellow entrepreneur dads of something that you've learned along the journey that will really benefit them to achieve their goals?
So I'll put it in terms of marriage advice. So whenever I was about to get married, my wife and I were engaged, and I'd been selling real estate at this point. And the builder developer that I worked for, he threw me and my soon-to-be wife a graduation party. And so a lot of people came, and the real estate market at the time, the market had crashed. And so there was a man there named Tim, and Tim and I had kind of worked together, but not for very long. And Tim had a little bit of a financial reversal. So he had done a lot of building and development, and some things didn't go well. And I'm not really sure the story, but he had what appeared to be a really strong marriage during a really difficult time in his life, or what I would assume would be a difficult time. And I remember asking him, Tim, what's the secret to marriage, a successful marriage? And he gave me what I think is still today the best advice. And it on its face, it's not much, but the more I thought about it, I've thought about this for 11 years now. And what he said, Brad, whenever you give your wife her coffee cup, you give her the cup with the handle facing out. And I don't even know if at the time I really thought much about it, but over time I was like, well, okay, number one, you're doing something nice for your wife because you're bringing her coffee cup, but assuming it's not iced coffee, like most coffee's hot, like you're probably burning your hand so that she can easily grab the cup and not burn hers. And I thought, man, that there's like so much there to unpack. And I don't believe in being subservient to your wife. So like, don't get me wrong on that. But to be so thoughtful to do that for someone, I think it's like, because it really is the little things in a lot of ways. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about that. I met with him for lunch a couple of weeks ago, and he didn't know this. I said, man, you gave me the best marriage advice I'd ever heard. And he didn't remember it, but it certainly stuck with me. So hopefully it'll stick with some of you guys.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate it. I'm very happy to ask this too. It doesn't always get the time to ask this. Hey, Brad, listen, for those that are watching this and have some extra questions for you, how can they get in contact with you? What can they find your podcast, etc.?
Yeah, so my podcast is the Investor Creator Podcast, and certainly on Facebook, Brad Smotherman, for anybody that wants to add me there. And for those that feel inclined to email me, just feel free to email me, brad@bradsmotherman.com.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Brad, thank you so much for being on. Everybody else, if you're watching this, make sure you put a like, a heart, right? Show Brad some love for the golden nuggets that he shared with us. Also share this with your fellow entrepreneur dads that you think like, dude, they got to know about the coffee cup. I mean, shoot, everybody should, right? So make sure you do that. And thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate you. And we'll see each other very soon on the next live interview. Take care and have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.